This is video taken from CTA security camera number 7 at the 95th Street Red Line station on Saturday, March 8, 2003. Although the clock on the upper right corner of the video frame shows it to be 7:16 a.m., it is actually 1 hour earlier. The man strolling toward the camera in the middle of the picture is 23-year-old Michael Pleasance. It seems reasonable to surmise that he's looking for his friend Patrick Anderson, whose jacket he holds. Anderson is at that moment engaged in a fight near the turnstiles, which is not captured on the CTA cameras. As Pleasance passes out of the range of camera 7, he seems to walk right under it here. Chicago police officer Alvin Weems comes around the corner in a white stocking cap, his gun already in his hand. Weems and Pleasance will now be picked up by CTA camera 8. Weems and Anderson will move into range of this camera again in 2 minutes. By that time, Pleasance will be dead. This is video taken from CTA security camera 8. The footage begins before Michael Pleasance and Officer Weems approach. The man in the middle of the frame is Patrick Anderson, who is engaged in a fight near the station turnstiles, which are not covered by this camera. He seems to be returning to the fight here. The man in the white jacket coming into view, his back to the camera, is 23-year-old Michael Pleasance, captured earlier walking down the corridor by camera 7. He holds Anderson's jacket. He's followed by Chicago police officer Alvin Weems, wearing a white stocking cap, and you'll see Weems has his gun out as he passes the elevator towards the fight. Weems, having approached the fight, now retreats and looks off in the distance, as if looking for reinforcements. Seeing none, he returns to the turnstiles. Weems has arrived late for work. He was supposed to have been in uniform and on duty at 6 a.m. And looking off in the distance, Weems may have been looking for his partner, police officer Donald Johnson, but Johnson is also late. He will not arrive until 6:45. You'll see Michael Pleasance backing up here, still holding his friend's jacket. Weems, having returned to the fight, will now emerge pushing Patrick Anderson toward the wall. Michael Pleasance follows the two. Weems is in a bad spot here. When he came into the station and saw the fight, he dropped his equipment bag containing his badge, hat, handcuffs, pepper spray, and his duty weapon. He has no radio to call for backup because it's kept in the police room in the station. His partner is nowhere in sight. Furthermore, he does not know if Anderson is an instigator or a victim. Anderson, meanwhile, is not going quietly. Although he does not attack Weems, he disputes Weems's judgment. You'll see Anderson raise his arm and point toward the turnstiles, as if to a more guilty party, more than 20 times in the 2 CTA videos. Pleasance, less bellicose than Anderson, has not been involved in the fight, and he talks to Officer Weems here as well. In the next few seconds, Anderson raises his arm. Pleasance does the same, seemingly either to point toward the turnstiles or to shield himself from his friend's arm. Officer Weems will raise his gun and shoot Pleasance in the head. In a few seconds, Anderson and Weems will drop out of range of camera 8 and will reappear on camera 7, which will eventually show police arriving in response to 911 calls. None of the 911 calls identify Weems as a police officer. One bus driver who called in identified Weems as a stick-up man. Here you'll see Weems kick Anderson's leg out from underneath him. The two will briefly wrestle and then return to the positions they were in before. Police officers responding to 911 calls will eventually arrive on the scene. If you keep watching for another 2 minutes, you'll see officers exit a squad car, approach Weems and Anderson, and order Weems to put his gun on the floor. Anderson lays on the ground and is handcuffed relatively quickly. Weems is handcuffed about a minute later and is taken to the police room in the station. In police reports filed afterwards, Weems reported that Pleasance was one of the fighters at the turnstiles. Seemingly not knowing that this incident had been videotaped, Weems also said that just before the shooting he was surrounded by 4 or 5 men, including Pleasance, who threatened his life, and that it was only at that point that he drew his gun. Police detectives and commanders viewed this video after the shooting and claimed it supported Weems's statement. In her report on the incident, Assistant Deputy Superintendent Sandra Day said she had viewed this video and that it supported Weems's story that Pleasance had lunged and swung at Weems with a closed fist. Day's report makes no mention of the fact that Weems was late and that had he and his partner been on time, properly clad and equipped, Pleasance would not have been shot. Area 2 detectives who investigated the shooting classified Michael Pleasance as a criminal assailant who attempted to disarm Weems. They concluded that the shooting was justifiable homicide. Police press spokesman Pat Candon described the incident to the press on the morning of the shooting. He said that Weems had been under siege from a group of men and was in fear of his life. "You've got 7 people attempting to take an individual in custody from a police officer," Candon said. "They were trying to defeat the arrest." The Office of Professional Standards sustained 10 charges against Weems, accusing him of lying, misusing his weapon, bringing discredit upon the department, and being late for work. They recommended that Weems be fired. Superintendent Phil Klein, who'd worked with Weems in the early 1990s, held a press conference in 2004, more than a year and a half after the shooting. He claimed Pleasance had attacked Weems, and that Weems, in trying to fend off Pleasance's hand, had raised the gun and accidentally fired. Klein made no mention of Weems's false testimony, of the fact that Weems was ill-equipped, of the Office of Professional Standards findings, or of the fact that the city had fought to keep the tape from being released. Klein suspended Weems for 30 days for having his finger on the trigger of his gun and for being tardy, though he didn't spell out what the consequences of that tardiness were. He made no mention of Weems's partner, Officer Donald Johnson, who finally showed up at 6:45. In 2005, Klein promoted Weems to detective.